Alright, I'd like to demonstrate some different watercolor techniques. I did a quick sketch of an eye to show a few different techniques. I'm going to work on painting it. I'm going to show some mostly wet on dry and dry on dry techniques for this. I've already put in a quick little layer of yellow ochre around the eye with a little bit of burnt sienna in a few places to add some warmth, and then I went ahead and painted in the iris with yellow ochre because I want my eye to be green. And if you've ever looked at someone with green eyes very closely, at least around the pupil, the iris has actually got a beautiful golden color, so that's why I started with that. I'm going to show you how to do a little shading around the eye and also how to do a quick iris with watercolor. So I'm going to work on the iris first so it can dry while I'm working on some other parts. I'm going to grab some sap green, and I'm going to have my blending brush ready, which is another brush that is just got water in it for blending. I'm using a number 6 for my main painting, and then I'm using a really crummy number 6 for my blending. I have about 4 number 6s with my brushes. I love this size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint green. This is awfully bright right now, but that's okay. Especially along the top and along the edges of the iris. Just like this. Take my blending brush and just soften the edges so that it kind of fades into the yellow a bit. I'm going to leave this darker at the top just from the shadow of the eyelid. And while that's drying, I'm going to paint around the eye and eyelid. As you can see, I left the highlight in the eye white. I don't have white paint on my palette, and so you have to leave that white, as well as the white of the eye obviously is left white. We'll do a little shading on that too, but this will get started. So for shading around the eye, I'm going to grab some burnt umber, which is a dark brown. It's got nice reddish tones, so it's perfect for doing skin tones. I am going to do just a little bit of shading around the corners of the eye just to give it a little depth. This is going to be a quick little study. I'd normally go in and do a lot more layers and probably some more detail, but this will give you an idea. So I'm going to chance it and paint next to the eye. I think I'll be okay. I don't think it'll bleed much. Next to the iris, I mean. I'm going to do a little shading in the tear duct here. Just a little bit, and then a bit here. Let's just show a little bit of depth. And already I'm giving the illusion of some space. Okay, that's a good start. See how it's drying pretty fast here in West Texas, which is great. So I'm going to take some of that same burnt umber and I'm going to add it to my green to tone it down a bit. I'm sure there are people out there with that bright a green eye, but normally I'm going to head mine towards hazel. So I'm going to take my blending brush again, blend out that brown, pull it down to the green a bit more, like that. I can also kind of flick up a few little bits here and there like that. I'm going to soften those. I don't want them too stark. Do a little bit of shading at the top of the eye too. I think I'll just make that more solid. Anyway, okay, got a good start on the iris and the eye. It's looking pretty good. Since I'm not using a lot of water with my paint, I'm kind of painting almost dry on dry. Things dry really fast. I'm going to fan it a bit, see if it'll dry quicker so I can get further along in my demonstration. I'm going to do a quick row of eyelashes at the bottom of the eye. I'm going to grab my number 0 paintbrush and some of that burnt umber again because I don't want the bottom lashes really dark. I don't ever start at the tear duct. I think if you had eyelashes here it'd be kind of painful. So I start about here and I leave a little space because you've got a little bit of a lip here on your eye. So I'm going to start pulling those eyelashes just gently with my burn umber, just like that. Not super consistently because I want it to look more natural. But this is definitely dry on dry technique. And a good example. I'm getting really precise lines, which is wonderful. I think I'll go ahead and go in and fill in the pupil. I'm going to start with just the burn umber. I'll go back in with a much darker color later, but this will give me an idea of what it's looking like. I like to layer using watercolor. I very rarely just use one color in any spot. I think it gives it a lot of depth and feel. Okay, so we're looking pretty good so far. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and darken up the outside rim of the iris. This. Depending on what color I really want it to end up, I could do another layer on that end too. I think I'm going to put a little bit more green in the iris. Grab some more of my sap green. Push that green back. I think I got a little too hazily. Too much brown. Like that. Alright, I'm going to let that dry a little bit more before I mess with it anymore. I'm going to do a little shading of the white of the eye. People forget to shade that a lot sometimes, but it is round and it's tucked inside the folds of your eyelid, so don't forget to show that. I'm grabbing some sepia mixed with Prussian blue. It's one of my favorite mixed colors I keep in my palette. It's just kind of a muted blue, grayish blue. I use it a lot as a shading color. I'm going to give a little shadow here for the upper eyelid and just continue that around softly on the corners, just slightly. I don't want to put too much in there. I want it to be nice and bright. Pull that in. I'm going to put more water on my brush and just put a little bit right there. It's really starting to take shape. I'm going to pull some more burnt umber, a little drier on my brush. I'm going to emphasize this fold here, the eyelid, a little bit more, make it a little darker. Just go along the line there. Like that. I'm going to grab a little bit darker green to do some more shading in the iris. So I think I want it to be more green. I'm just going to pull it just a little bit around the outside edges and where the shadow is. I don't want it to go crazy, so I'm going to grab my number 4 blender, since I'm kind of getting in a smaller area, and just soften that so it looks more natural. There we go, that's looking nice. Now I might pull in some lines with that darker green, and that's adding some nice texture there. I'm going to do a little bit of shading in the tear duct now. Just give it some depth. Maybe bring that burnt sienna into the eye just a little bit so it won't feel so stark. Okay, I'm going to grab my number 4, if I can find it. It vanished. Okay, I'll grab my number 6 again. I'm going to do some upper eyelid lashes. I'm going to do my eye kind of gender neutral, not real big eyelashes, not real small. Would work either for a man or woman, probably more on the women's side because I like eyelashes. But I'm going to take some burnt umber again, and I will layer my eyelashes as well, but this will be the first nice layer. I'm going to start just gently, like so, pulling out my upper lashes. Okay. Just like that, just very, very gently. Not too high. I'm actually going to kind of soften the edges of some of those. I think that's a good start. Alright, normally I would do a little bit more work before I start putting in the very dark darks, but I'm going to go ahead and just kind of finish up this eye really quick for you. Instead of black, I use sepia, which is like black and brown mixed together almost. It's a really, really dark brown, and I love it because it shows up black for all intents and purposes, but it is not as cold as black, and I think it looks more realistic than black, especially on people. So this is the sepia I'm using for the pupil. Look how dark and wonderful it is. Yay, I love sepia. It is one of the few tubes of paint that I buy several a year. I go through that much sepia. Okay, nice and dark. Alright, I'm going to go back along the top lid with my sepia and really hit that nice and dark. So I want my eyelashes to be beautiful and lovely. And when you do a couple of layers for things even like eyelashes, it really gives it a lot of depth and realism. So when you're painting, think about the different colors that could make up an area, even if it seems like it's the obvious choice is just hit it with black. The under lashes are showing up as that burnt umber, which is nice. And I'm going to carry this sepia around to the edges of my iris. I'm not going to go all the way around, just kind of 3/4, halfway around. And I might be a little too dark, but I'm going to hit a few of these lower lashes with the sepia too, just to pull them out just a bit. And I'm going to put a little shadow here around the eye, and just a little tiny bit here at the tear duct, just to give it a little bit more pop. Maybe hit a little bit more on that. I'm going to water down my sepia quite a bit, but I'm going to do a little bit of shading up here. Just like that. Okay, I think that's probably a good place to stop and look at it later, but basically that's how you can shade an eye pretty quickly using a lot of dry on dry technique. I hope that was helpful.